Welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast, brought to you in association with our friends at Soccer Coach Weekly, reflecting our shared ambition to help coaches have the most effective, enjoyable and successful coaching journey for them and their players. We hope you enjoyed this episode and thanks for listening. Hi Macca, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. And I know we've kind of exchanged messages over Twitter over the last, a while now. But actually, you've come on a very short notice. So I'm very grateful for you saying yes, like within 24 hours and getting on the Zoom call and having a chat. So I know you're busy. So thank you so much. How are things?
Yeah, very good, mate. All good here. How's things with you?
Yeah, not too bad. You are looking remarkably sprightly and youthful stuff for a young man who's got a 30-month or 50-month old kid.
Yeah. I don't
obviously mastered the art of this fatherhood thing. Teach us.
It's nice. It's nice as one says I'm looking youthful. I seem to be getting on a bit now, so that's.
Oh no! Don't
I'll
tell me
that, mate. Thanks.
Well, this is why this is audio only, not video, because I'm definitely getting older. But congratulations on the little one, and
thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Look, I've seen a lot of the things you put out on Twitter. I think it's fantastic stuff you share out there. You put a lot of things out there that that A, pick up a lot of traction, but also B, just remind us of stuff that either I've never thought about before. Actually, I need to rethink about that again. So thank you for the stuff you share on Twitter, because it's brilliant, and we'll make sure your Twitter handle is in our show notes so people can find that stuff. But the problem I had was actually trying to choose a topic to talk to you about, because there was so much stuff we could have covered.
Yeah, I guess it's. These are broad amount things I can speak about. The topic that we have gone for today, I'm not saying it because you've chosen it. I actually think it's the best one you could have chosen. It's a topic that I'm really passionate about, and something that I think if we can share the information that we're going to share throughout this podcast, even with one coach and the benefit from it, then it's been a massive success to me. It's an area of the game that I think doesn't need a massive overhaul, but I think there's got to be a lot more development given to coaches at the bottom end of the game, the grassroots level of the game, specifically on this topic. So, yeah, you've chose a good one.
Well, I even cheated there. I've kind of squeezed in two. I've kind of done the main one, and then there's a little bit of an add-on bit around kind of the fact we're getting to win stuff like that. So hopefully they'll work well together. But yeah, the main one is really about this idea of like designing effective training practices. And like, Macca, I know you're not going to preach to people and tell them, but this is kind of what your version and why you think it's important. And people will take what they want out of that, and I think that's great. So brilliant. Thank you, mate. I really appreciate that. Well, look, for those that maybe haven't stalked you on Twitter like I have, or don't know you personally, a bit about your background, your coaching journey, and what is you currently do, if that's all right.
I started coaching just under 6 years ago. I was playing football. In fact, I'll take you back for a few years before that. I was at college, and I'd done some analysis for a National League North side at the time. The manager there was my college tutor, so I kind of slipped into that. And this was before analysis was analysis. So how it worked was I went there with a video camera, and I used to watch the game back, write down the amount of passes that make successful passes, like the most basic form of analysis you can ever imagine. And then I went into playing football, just amateur level, grassroots. And I always wanted to go into the coaching side of the analysis side of the game. I wasn't really sure when and how to do it due to playing. But at 21, I decided to go into coaching, start coaching at grassroots level with a under 12 side of the club that I was actually playing at. I then went to.
You were under 12s, though, were you?
Yeah, sorry.
You weren't the under 12s. You weren't a ringer in there.
No.
We play against teams like you that put in some of the big lads. Under 12s.
No, I'm a bit too big for that, I think. But no, yeah, started coaching the 12s, then went on within 18 months, 2 years to, I got an opportunity. I was working at like what you'll call a grassroots academy. A guy who played professional football. I think he had a lot of appearances, League One, League Two. He set up his own academy when he retired. So I went to work there, and he became the manager of a Step 4 team, which is like Northern Premier. Ended up doing a spell there with him, which was unbelievable to go from working under 12 grassroots with no experience ever coaching to working at Step 4 within 2 years was ridiculous and a massive eye opener, by the way. And looking back, probably completely out of my depth, but the experiences and the journey was so good. Then went to work in professional football. Beyond that, out in Lithuania, was assistant manager and analyst at a second division club out there. Came back to England, worked for a professional academy, a League One side academy, and then back into Step 4. I'd worked at 2 clubs beyond that, coaching as a first team coach and then as an analyst most recently. And then I went back into this season. I went back into grassroots football, which is it's such a weird journey. It's went like from bottom to top and back to bottom. So I went from grassroots to semi-professional to professional, back to semi-professional and back to grassroots. So it's a perfect alignment. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But I'm working back in grassroots amateur football at the minute, and loving it. The best form of the game. I have aspirations, and I'm still so driven to work at the very top of the game, and I still genuinely believe I work at the very top of the game. But the best form of the game over the past 6 years and the experiences I've enjoyed the most, other than coaching in Lithuania, which was phenomenal. But in terms of the truest form of the game, grassroots is unbelievable. I always say to the club, we've got a committee at the club I work at now, and one of a guy called Neil, we always have a conversation, and I always say to him, if this club ever become rich enough, or you become rich enough, please make this my full-time job, because I just love grassroots football. It's an unbelievable form of the game, isn't it? It's just the purest form. Everyone's there in their purest form, and I love grassroots. So it's nice to be back there this season. I'm going to spend one season there because I've got a lot of other commitments at the moment with a business I recently started, and obviously a new child. So I decided to take a season back into grassroots, which many might look as a step back, but actually I'm so happy I've done it. It's phenomenal to go from professional football back to grassroots, and the headaches it causes you, and people text you 5 minutes before the session, sorry, my dogs ain't my homework, I can't come. It's unbelievable. I love it. So yeah, that's kind of the journey from grassroots all the way to pro, back to grassroots. And then obviously I am still on this journey of wanting to get back into full-time football, which I'm looking to do. I'm already trying to contact and speak to a few clubs and people at the moment for next season, for 2024. So hopefully we can take a step back in.
Well, I always complain that I'm busy and do a lot, but whenever I speak to people, guests on, then they tell what they're doing. It's like mental. So well done. Like, it's experience. Is like, there's no substitute for them, is there? Like, the more things you can try and dip your toe in and experience and different environments and different age groups and stuff like that, I think it all adds to being a better coach, doesn't it? I mean, you've gone back in out of grassroots. Obviously, you went in deep end at under 12s, I would say, because that's not easy going in that age group anyway. And what age group are you doing now? Is it the adults?
Yeah, senior. Yeah, just it's senior football. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can't really compare with when you started under 12s. When you first went under 12s in way back then, reflecting back on that now, did you feel you went in were you okay and comfortable with that at that time, or did you feel like you were looking back now, were you missing stuff that would have been more useful to know?
No, to be honest, the way that my personality is, and I am, the people who know us will know this, and the people who don't won't. But I'm such an outgoing person. I'm so loud. I speak so much. So like working with older children was always something I was happy and keen to do. Like, I guess if you're your first time ever coaching and you're a bit of a timid person and a shy person, it would, the under 12s would maybe get the better of you, wouldn't they?
Exactly.
Start getting a little bit cheeky at that age.
Yeah.
But because of my personality, I was kind of always suited. I was probably more suited for that age group than I would be the under 6s and 7s. And I guess that's why across my journey from grassroots to professional football, a large majority of it has been working in senior adult football. There's actually only been a really small snippet of it at the very start, and then working for the academy, Carlisle United it was. That's been with kind of younger children. But even across that time, under 12s has been the youngest I've worked with on a permanent basis. I've never really worked with any age group younger than that across the 6 years anyway.
Right. And we can't let that one go. Lithuania, I think you're the first coach you've had that's been out there. We've had people of some different areas coaching, but Lithuania's a new one. How was that? What's it like out there? Is it different to UK?
Oh, mate, honestly, it's unbelievable. It's like I always have such a sadness now. This is a bit of a downer, but I'm also sad now about not coming back, because the opportunity to come back was right. But I loved it so much. Like, life out there is just so different, and it's probably the life that was more valuable to me as a person than the actual coaching the football side. Because I say this to everyone who asks me about it. People in Lithuania are genuinely just grateful for life. Like, you come back here and we complain about, oh, my iPhone 15's got no charger. I need a power pack. We haven't got this, we haven't got that. And I lived in a hotel at the stadium when I was out in Lithuania. They had a hotel built onto the ground for some of the players and the staff. And out the back window, there was a big patch of grass. And some of the kids I used to coach, and some that I never, but obviously they're friends from school, they would play on it all after school all day. And they used to have one ball, and they used to use, and it made me laugh, they used to use like jumpers for goalposts. And obviously I used to do that as a kid. And I used to play a game called Jumpers for Goalposts. Mate, and they'll play there with one ball for hours and hours on end. And they were just the happiest people. And it always used to make me smile looking out the back window, looking at them, thinking, if this was in England, and this isn't a criticism to people in England or where we come from, but if you give that exact setup to some 12-year-old kids in England, they'd be complaining, one, they didn't have enough balls, two, they didn't have enough equipment, they needed some mini goals, or they needed some cones, or they needed this and that. And it's like, out in Lithuania, everyone's just so grateful for life and to be living and get an opportunity to wake up every day and breathe air. And you know what? It's so good for you, like spiritually. I loved it out there. It's fantastic.
Oh, well, you can hear the passion coming through. So, I'm glad to have you back over here with us. That's fantastic. But again, another great experience to have under your belt. So well done. All right. Well, let's get into the conversation. That's okay. So we're going to look at how you go about designing effective training practices. But I guess that before we can get into the sessions itself, maybe it's just good to get your own thoughts around. Okay, before a coach thinks about their actual practices, like individually, what should they think above kind of on the high level, the macro side, if you like? Is there like a curriculum plan that you would suggest or anything around that before we get into sessions individually?
It kind of refers to that. There's two sides of it, I think, and I'll come into one of the sides on the next question, because looking at the some of the stuff you've sent me, there's an opportunity to get a really good answer out. But without delving too much into the game model side, a curriculum, as you suggest, or some sort of periodization if you're working at higher level of the game, for me, is so important, because you kind of go away from randomizing. 1 week we're going to do, for example, 1 week we're going to do a high press. Next week we're going to do, midfield block. It kind of gives, and a massive importance to it, a good structure. I think if you follow a good structure, and even at grassroots level, at under 12s, 13s, if you follow a set structure, and it doesn't have to be incredibly detailed, by the way, it might be a case of you write down 6 blocks, building, creating, finishing, all the stuff that's there on the FA website, high block, mid block, low block, and you do one session of every single block, and then you rotate it. So week 7, you go back to week 1. The structure that you'll have and what you'll bring to training sessions and to the players is so important. So I think at any level you're working at, following maybe not a massively detailed curriculum, but following some sort of structure is so important, because it takes away the randomness and the variability, and having structure in a player's head, I guess, for them is so important. Like if they can turn up week 5 and know, okay, last week we're doing a mid block, but this week it's a low block, then maybe they start thinking about it before the session, thinking, okay, the mid block this last week looked like this. How is that going to be relatable to the low block? Whereas they might turn up and you do a random session week 1, week 5, week 7, and think, what we're going to do this week, is it relatable to what we've been doing? So it's not actually just for you as a coach to ensure that you're following some sort of structure. It's actually so beneficial to the players in that they can practices and sessions become relatable to other sessions or to the game, or the 11v11 game or the 7v7 game. So yeah, I think looking at some sort of structure or curriculum is hugely important. And personally, I wouldn't ever deviate from a curriculum or a set structure.
Well, it's funny because when you speak about things like curriculum or periodization, I think people think, oh, that's a professional game. That's kind of out there a little bit. That's not for us. But actually, when you understand what's behind these concepts, and like you say, you haven't got to go too much into detail, but I actually think they're more or even more valuable for grassroots football, because you get less time with your players, right? So it helps you maximize the time you've got with them, right? I'm sure with the grassroots team you've got now, it's probably less hours coaching time than you've got in the professional game, right? So it's even more important you've got a structure to go on above the sessions themselves.
Yeah. And also, as well as that, it becomes easier as a coach to have this structure. Like, you think having all these structures, like you say, everyone has this opinion, or a lot of coaches have this opinion, of periodization or a curriculum or structures, maybe for academy football or professional football. Actually, if you spend 3 hours one day creating a structure and a really simplified structure, every single week you now come to plan a training session, it's so much easier for you, because you look at your curriculum or your structure, you see what you're doing, then you start pulling out outcomes out of that specific topic or whatever, so it becomes easier as a coach to actually plan sessions and to refer back to.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a really unfair question and a curveball, because it's a completely off the cuff. You can't answer and just say, actually, Scott, I need more time on that one. But if you can, like, if you were thinking now then about like foundation, or no, say youth football, so maybe 12, 13, 14, 15s, was broadly, off the cuff here, if there was a periodization or a structure around that, what would you kind of think would be a sensible approach?
What do you mean in terms of
like an overview? So would you do would you do building for a couple of weeks, then maybe looking at creating, then finish a couple of weeks and work on that, and then go on the defensive side of things? Would you do 2 weeks with possession, 1 week out of possession? Like, how would you, for you, what would be the ideal situation or an ideal program for that kind of age group?
I would block the in possession, out of possession, and the transition stuff separately. So I'll give you off the cuff how we would look for a grassroots team. I would do it. So stick with in possession. Week 1 will be a build. Week 2 will be create. Week 3 will be finish. So we're working from back to front. Week 4 would start out possession, but we'll start from the high press, which will be then relatable to the week 1 build out. So what I'll say before I continue, by the way, week 1, which is we're working on build up play, is actually very similar to week 4 because it's the high press. So it correlates so well. So week 4, I'll do out of possession, high press. Week 5, a mid version. Week 6, what it looks like in the defensive third or low. And then I suppose coaching transition's a weird one because actually people coach transition in individually, but for me, transition should be involved in every single practice. There should be an element of transition in your build-up play or your high press. There should be some sort of transition in every individual practice. But yeah, to simplify it as best possible, if you don't want to go into detail, block it into 6 weeks, build, create, finish, high press, mid block, low block. You've then got 6 weeks worth of stuff, and you're kind of following on from each other every week. So when you're building from the back, what's the next phase of the game? Okay, we're working into the middle third of the game. Okay, so week 1's build, week 2's then the create phase, which is the middle third. So it runs smoothly, it runs nicely. You're working in correlation with what the game looks like in terms of the ball travels up the pitch and down the pitch. So yeah, I guess that's the simplest form I can put in.
I understood it, so it works brilliant. And off the cuff, I really appreciate it, Macca, because it's not easy, is it, trying to summarize something you might spend like hours and hours putting together, like in 2 minutes. But look, I think for coaches that understand that, that's a great starting point, right? It makes sense. And like you say, actually, week 1 and your week 4 almost mirror each other, don't they? So we're building out from one the Reds are building out and the Yellows are trying to do a high press. Well, there you go. We're improving our building out and our high press. We may focus on just one of those teams as our main coaching point, but actually we can almost work on 2 things at once, although we're working on specifically focus on one. So Macca, thank you so much. All right, brilliant. Well, that clarifies that. So let's get into nitty gritty now then. Well, again, let's be clear. Like I've used the word effective, maybe unfair, but I put the word effective in. But it's important the fact you're going to describe what effective is, and we know what effective means to you. So when we talk about being effective, what do you mean?
An effective training practice is a practice that the intended outcomes are transferable to the game, but specific to your players. And what I mean by that is I'll go into a bit of detail with this question. I think it's probably the most important question in terms of what can we mean in terms of effective or realistic. I think every single coach should have a game model. And what I mean by a game model is if you write your thoughts down on a bit of paper of how you think the game should be played, that can be a game model. So when I first started coaching nearly 6 years ago, my game model was one piece of paper on a PowerPoint, how I thought the in-possession phase should look, the out-possession phase, the transition phase. It was incredibly simple. Fast forward 6 years and all the work I've done in the game and everything I've learned, it's now a 67-page document, and I've got every single element of it as some sort of study or factual stuff from the pro game, and it links back. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be as simple as or as detailed as you want. And I guess if you're working in the grassroots form, it's important probably to be simple. So having a game model of how you think the game should be played is so important, because from that you can then create practices or steal practices and adjust them or develop them, progress them relatable to your game model. So one of the things, the best way to give an example of how, in my opinion, it shouldn't be done is if you've written down on your bit of paper your game model. So let's say out of possession on your game model, you believe that you want your team to high press, high intensity, high press, lock on man for man. Okay, so we're clear that's how I want the game to look. I then go to the training session on a Wednesday. Before the training session on a Wednesday, I've looked through Twitter, I've looked through YouTube, I've seen Diego Simeone's drill of Atletico Madrid doing a bit of work on compact low blocks, and I've looked and I thought, that looks great. It looks fun, looks engaging. Atletico Madrid players it, enjoying it. Looks like there's some good outcomes. Okay, I'll steal that and I'll use it at my training session. Go to the training session, use it. Do the players like it and enjoy it? Yeah, probably. Have they found this session engaging? Probably. We then roll into Saturday's game, and before the game, I say, okay, so out of possession, I want it to be man for man, locked on, high press, high intensity, and then you can see right away the confliction in the player's mind, thinking, okay, so Wednesday we've spent 60 minutes working on how to defend compactly in front of our own 18-yard box, and then we're going to Saturday's game, and you're now asking us to go on high press and be high intensity and lock on man for man. It's not transferable at all. And this is why, for me, it's so important to have even the most simplified version of a game model written down on a bit of paper, because then you can start designing effective practices which are transferable to the game, but specific to your players. So actually, I might look for, and there's no issue with stealing the practices, by the way. Stealing practices isn't an issue. But what you might do is, if you believe a high pressing, high intensity out of possession form of the game is the way to go, and that's what you believe, then they're the type of practices you should be looking to let's say, steal, but develop and progress yourself, because there's no real beneficiary in taking a practice that doesn't transfer in any way to how you believe the game should be played. So effectively, is the intended outcomes transferable, but specific to your players or specific to your game model?
Absolutely. I'm intrigued to know, from your 1-page PowerPoint slide to your 60 plus pages now, is it the fact that you've just added in detail? Because obviously you've got that more experience now and knowledge, or is it actually, do you know what, the first one was not where I wanted to be and I've completely invented my game model and now I've just kind of had to do something completely different? Or is it just layering off what you had?
There is so honest, there's so much, it's so transferable. There's actually so many similar things in there, but so I guess this is going into a lot of detail, and I'm conscious that maybe there's a lot of grassroots listeners, and I don't want to baffle people or waffle on. But on the one slide one, which they're both available on my Twitter, by the way. So if you want to see the difference,
I think I've seen it.
Yeah,
I got it in my head.
The difference is when you go onto the 67-page document, there's principles of things, there's sub principles, there's then sub principles. So basically, it could be the exact same. However, the 67 pages, you strip layers off and you strip layers off and you strip layers off, and it actually goes down to the minute of details. Whereas the 1-page document is a generic overview of what I think it should look like in possession, which even still is effective for the grassroots game and effective for planning training sessions, because you have some idea of how you want the game to look. You have it down how you want it to look in possession, whether it's 1 page or 100 pages, you still have a vision and an idea of how you want it to look, which then can then transfer to, okay, how can we plan and create training sessions or pinch training sessions and develop them?
Yeah. And have you found, obviously, having that level of detail written down and obviously in your head as well, does that help you be more effective out on the grass when you're coaching? Because you know it. I mean, the players haven't got that level of detail, surely, necessarily, but because you know it, does it help you be more succinct and clear in what you're trying to get the players to work on and practice?
Yeah, I think the players do know the detail, but I think the players know the detail subconsciously, that if you ask them what was on my game model, they wouldn't be able to tell you, but they know the detail for the coaching detail that you provide within practices. So if I asked, if I went down to the club I work at now, and I said to my centre forward, okay, what does it look like for you when we're defending in the attacking third, when we're pressing high? What does it look like for you? It will be able to tell me what it looked like, because through the coaching detail in the sessions, I've provided him with a vision of what it does look like, an explanation and demonstrations of what it looked like. But then if I said to him, tell me what the document says on high pressing, it would mean nothing to him, would it?
And rightly so, right? That's not the idea, is it? That it's the practical element that counts, not the written part of it, if you like. So.
Yeah, 100%. So is it important to have that level of detail? For me personally, yeah. Is it important for anyone and everyone to have that detail? Absolutely not. I think what I would say is, and I keep coming back to it, it is actually important, in my opinion, for every single coach, whether you're coaching under 6s, whether you're coaching under 12s, whether you're in the professional game, to have some sort of idea, and not in your head, written down on a bit of paper, of what you want the game to look like. Because as soon as you do that, I can promise you, the planning of training sessions, the review of your training sessions, the old plan, do, review model, it becomes so much simpler, because you know exactly what you want and what you expect and what your intended outcomes are within sessions.
I also think, Macca, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that I think when you write down yourself as a coach and you share that with your players, then you're more ready to stick into it and not jumping around a little bit and confusing them, because we've all done it like that. What a good idea this week, isn't that different idea next week? But I've written it down. I've got to stick with it now. I can change it if we agree as a team's change, but actually if I've written it down, I'm more consistent in what I'm saying.
And it's important to have consistency as well, again, across all levels of the game. And you're absolutely right in what you're saying, that if you've got a game model written down, you've automatically got consistency, because you're never ever going to go away from something that you've written or an idea that you've written down. You're never going to write in your game model, I want us to high press and be high intensity, but then in the practices and in the game say, I tell you what, let's just sit in a mid block and not do any press and have a compact structure, force them around the outside. Because what's the point in the game model? You're going to stick. You're going to stick. So you're correct in what you say. I agree.
And on that one, I guess the other thing is your game model could be actually, we want to be good at both, right? We want to be able to look at the opposition and recognize whether or not you're not stuck to doing one way of playing. And I think this is involved as well as coaches. It's like, even I think Pep was misunderstood here with the whole playing out from the back. I think you need the tools in your locker to be able to deal with the opposition you're facing, right? And actually having more than one way of playing your football in that position is okay. So game model can be flexible by nature in itself, right?
Yeah, mate, I think the game model, I think what's more important than it being flexible is that the principles remain the same. And a good example on the Pep one of that is every person you speak to, a lot of people that you speak to, if you said to them what's playing out from the back, they would say when the goalkeeper goes to the centre back, who goes into the full back, comes back to the centre back, goes into the middle man, he turns, he plays out wide. And actually, I'll tell you a great form of playing out from the back, and no one does it better than Brighton, where they have 7 players really, really low, and the goalkeeper goes and pings it into the centre forward's feet, who then links to a midfielder, and they've broke the lines of building through being direct. So actually, playing out from the back in our heads, and even in mine, when sometimes I'll think what is playing out from the back, it's when the goalkeeper plays to the centre half. But actually, if we play out from the back and we attract the opposition and they come press us really high, we've then got an opportunity to go and play direct in the centre forward. That's still playing out from the back because it's still a result of us trying to play or trying to attract a bit of pressure. So you're right, it is incredibly flexible, but as long as your principles remain the same, look, playing out from the back, I want us to be vertical, play good forward passes and break lines. Well, surely the goalkeeper going into the centre forward's feet is doing exactly that.
Yeah. Spot on. Couldn't agree more. 100%. Yeah. A lot. And I think in the old days when people didn't used to push high and sit back, you could play out from the back, like traditionally play out the back, like playing into your centre backs and your fullbacks. But and again, I think City and Brighton done this really well. Actually, our objective is to get the ball on the pitch as quick as we can. So if they're pressing high, then let's hit that player there. They do it for Haaland, don't they? Quite a lot. And then also it keeps the opposition guessing, doesn't it? You've got to do different things. If you're predictable all the time, what's the point of being predictable?
But the principles remain the same. Whether it's playing into playing from back to front with short vertical passes, or whether it's playing back to front with a direct vertical pass, the intended outcome is the same, and it's to play vertical passes as quick as we can into the centre forward to create goal scoring opportunities. So the principles remain the same regardless of how it looks.
All right, so let's get into the big question now then. So in your view of things, we've discussed about having like the broader kind of curriculum or periodization of structure. We've looked at, okay, what effective actually means about being transferable and actually working and being in line with the game model. So now I've got to design my session out, ready for my practices. How can I make sure it's going to be effective?
Oh, how can you make sure it's going to be effective?
How can coaches design effective training practices?
There's various ways, but specific. I think the line of questioning is tailored towards the tweet I done regarding designing realistic training drills. So I'll use that as a good example because it's a fun one. It's probably the most fun way to create training sessions. So what I would say is a great way and a really fun way to design training sessions. Look, you can steal training sessions. We've said this and adapt them and adjust them to your players. I have no issue with that. But a really fun way to create a unique training session, which was covered on the thread that I post on Twitter, is okay. So my game model in my head, let's say it's a high, like we build out from the back. Want to build up from the back, play really good, intricate, short football. So as a coach, that's my idea. So what other teams in world football in the professional game do that? So let's say Man City do it. Okay. So if I watch 2-3 games of Man City, what you'll find is that you see the same patterns, the same scenarios, the same situations. You can then deviate that and bring that down to common scenarios happening with the game, and it's transferable to the design element of a training practice. So the one specific, I'll give the specific example from the thread so people can refer back to. So the thread on Twitter and the way it was designed in realistic practice was, it was based on a counter-attacking practice, and it was Nottingham Forest against Arsenal, and it was Forest had won the ball, ended up 3v2 with 3 Arsenal players recovering behind. Okay, now do we think that before the game, Nottingham Forest had an intention of probably sitting deep, being compact, not conceding a lot of goals, and then trying to score on the counter attack? Because I would say they probably did. I would say that's an objective before the game. So that's within the gaffer's model. You know, that's what he wants to do. It's something that they probably trained on through the week. So we then go into the game, and the situation that's drawn on the thread is a 3v2 scenario attack. So if, as a coach, you believe counter-attacking and playing against opposition teams from deep and trying to score through counter-attacks is a good way, watch Nottingham Forest versus Arsenal, or watch other games where teams sit really deep and go on counter-attack. Because again, the similar to the Man City example I've just given then, you will see so many scenarios that are common. And the common one that you see in the Arsenal Forest game there is they have a lot of moments in transition where they play a direct ball forward into the centre forward and it ends up 3v2 or 4v3. So from that, you can get still images, stop the game. You can just visually draw it on a bit of paper, and you can start designing practices. So it's it's hard to explain the specifics through audio, but if anyone isn't completely aware of what I mean and what I'm getting at, please go and look at the thread. It's called Designing Realistic Training Drills. And the basis of it is, is finding teams that can play similar to yours or have coaches who have a similar game model, then watching a lot of their games and finding very common scenarios, because it can be stripped back and put into a training practice. So, yeah, it's a fun way to do it, isn't it? I think if you find, and the pro game, by the way, is no different to me to the grassroots game. You kind of see similar scenarios. So you see a lot of overlapping runs in the pro game, or you see it in the grassroots. You see third man runs, you see in blast. There's not a massive differential in scenarios we see from the top to the bottom. So if your game model will always be relatable to a professional coach or a professional team. So a fun way we're doing it is we'll watch that team, see the common scenarios. It's obviously relatable to your team because the game models are so similar. And you obviously get the fun out of watching a professional game and stripping it back to create a training practice.
I like the point that you make, because actually you can pick up like a single moment in a single match and say, oh, that's it. But actually, if you can find repetition of similar scenarios in different matches, I think that then you've got something you can rely on, because actually we can all find one thing in one game to kind of say, well, that's how I do stuff. But actually, if you see it again and again and again, it generates understanding. The danger here, I guess, is that, our under 12s aren't Man City, are they? That's the thing. So as a coach, how do you take that kind of concept and those things, or how would you take it and then get it into your players in a way that's kind of appropriate for where they are at their age and stage? Because we haven't got on probably 30 hours a week. We haven't got the best training facilities in the world. We're not playing on lovely football pitches. How would you adjust that according to make sure it worked with your players?
Yeah, and it relates back to what we said at the start, by the way, in terms of what is an effective training practice. And my answer was, it's got to be, the intended outcomes have got to be transferable, but specific to your players. So you can create a training drill, or you can pinch a training drill from a coach who's got a similar model as what you have, or similar principles of you have, but it might not work. And the reason why it doesn't work is because what you've said, the levels, it's maybe too high of a level. You may be taking a practice from Nottingham Forest and trying to do it with under sixes, and it doesn't work and it breaks down. My best advice would be strip it back to the simplest form of what level that players are at. So the counter-attacking practice on the thread we're on about, it could probably be done by most senior teams the same as it can be done by Forest. Would it be difficult for an under-8s team? Probably, because there's 3 recovering defenders. Are they going to run 20 yards and put recovery tackling? Probably not. So how can we strip that back? Well, you might strip it back by, instead of going with a 3v2 and 3 recovering defenders, you might just do little phases of 2v1s. Counter-attack, it might be, okay, the coach serves the ball in, you do a 2v1, and then you go score. It's the same principles. The counter-attacking principles are still the same. You've just stripped it back. You've simplified it a little bit. And it's important to remember that the level your players are at is so important to the design element of the practice, because if it's too easy for players, do they get much out of it? Probably not. If it's too difficult, do they get much out of it? Probably not. So it is about finding that balance, that what age and ability your players are, does that then fit to the practice that you've designed? And look, often, and I've done this so many times, I'm sure a lot of coaches have, I've done a practice on a bit of paper and thought, this looks unbelievable, it's going to be a great session. You get there and it runs into the ground, it's horrendous. The players don't understand it, or it doesn't work for the players, and you start scratching your head thinking, why isn't this worked? And actually, sometimes it's just about layering it off, simplifying it a little bit, and then using it as a building block. Maybe the third week they'll get the practice that you've done on week 1, because you've spent 2 weeks layering it and building up to the point where, okay, we understand this now, and okay, this works for us now. But based on I would say it's so important that the design element to consider the age, the ability, and look, not overcomplicating it all the time. I think simple sometimes better, isn't it?
100%. And I like the fact you said at the beginning there that, really what you're trying to do here is not trying to see things you like and then crowbar into like your game model. It's like, actually have your game model. When you see things that you think, actually there's a visualization of what we're trying to do here, and you can share that either for your own understanding or for your players, I think that's the best way of going about it, isn't it? Have your game model first, have your principles of play first in that possession. And then when you see things like, that teams doing at any level, but particularly he's on TV, right? Because the analysts have all the games on for the Premier League all the time. So you can look at that and then taking those snippets and sharing them. It doesn't mean you're trying to be Man City or Brighton or anyone else. It just means actually you're using those as living examples to show the players how they want to embed it.
And it is common. And it is common, by the way. It's what you say. You can see something in the game once, and it doesn't actually mean it's part of someone's model. I think it's so important to this specific example in terms of watching professional games. The only reason I say this because it's something I've not seen a lot of people speak about in terms of watching the pro game and relating it back to your own game model and creating practices through it. So it's something quite unique and something that I'd done myself. So it was kind of nice to share that and put that out there. But you are so right in that it's got to be things that are repeatedly done in the game, because otherwise you're basically just picking snippets and it actually might not be part of the principles. It might be like a one-off moment, or a moment of magic from a player, and you think, oh, that's part of X's principles or Y's principles, and actually it's not. It was just an individual. It was just a moment in the game. So finding the repetition is so important, because then I think you're so confident in that. Okay, this is part of this person's model. This is part of this person's idea.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Okay. Well, again, Mac, I appreciate it's maybe not an unfair question, but a difficult one to answer. But could you give us a sense of, if you're taking a training session this evening, you can choose the age group, everything else, the ability, whatever else. But how would it look? Well, how would it start? How would it end? Is it games based? Is it drill practice? How would you go about, I don't know, a 90-minute, 2-hour training session with the players that you've got?
The honest answer to this question is that it would change every single week based on the age of the players, based on the time that we've got, based on the space that we've got available. I don't think there's any one fit all answer to this question, because I think the variables change so much that, okay, so if you give me under 12s group for an hour and we had half of a pitch, but then you give me under 14s group for 30 minutes and we had a quarter of pitch, the practice would look completely different. So to answer the question in specifics is difficult. But what I will say is that, and I relate back to the game model side of it, and it's quite important to have a game model. Every single practice will have purpose. And that word purpose is so, so important. Okay, so I'm so extreme on this, and I understand that people maybe won't agree with this opinion. That's fine. Everyone's got their own ideas and thoughts on coaching. But I am so, so extreme with this point that I will never, ever do anything in the training session that doesn't have purpose or doesn't relate to something that I think belongs in the game. And many might disagree with that. They maybe say you take a bit of fun out of the game doing that, and that's fine. And that's maybe a valid opinion and a valid point. However, if we do any single training session that you give me, if you give me a random age now out of a hat and you give me a random pitch size and a random time and said to me, do a training session, the sessions would look completely different on the eye, but they would always have the same underlying things, the same principles. That would always be relatable to me. That would always be relatable to my game model and how I believe the game should look. So although that training sessions and individual practices can look so, so different on the eye, actually the underlying part of them is always the same for me, in terms of it relates to my principles, what I believe the players should believe, or the players should know, what the players should do. So yeah, I think that's how it would, without going into a specific 2-hour practice with the under 16s. I think it's just so important to have purpose in everything you do. And like, I guess in youth football, sometimes it's let them play for 20 minutes at the end, don't do any coaching. And I guess that's probably the one exception to having no purpose. But then there still is a purpose, because the purpose that is let them have fun. Let them be really, really engaged for 20 minutes.
Yeah. And see what they're like, right? Without a coach in their ear. I think you see a lot sometimes. We start our sessions with free playing. It's not because we just want the boys to turn up for this, but you see who's up for it. You see who's got personality. You see who's, maybe had a bad day at school or something. And you just by observing for 15, 20 minutes, you see a lot of what the players are. And then you ask them to show what they did last week. Don't say what last week was, just show us what you did last week. And you can see who's remembered and who's building on it. So like you say, I totally agree. And again, it's one of those things where the less time you got with your players, right, the more important that is.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And what I would say is there's never free play is never ever without purpose. By the way, I don't want people to think when I say everything's got a purpose, like it's got to be strict drills, it's got to be routine drills, really predefined stuff. Free play's actually got a lot of purpose. In fact, there's probably more purpose in free play than there is in any training drill we can design. But what I would say, if people are wondering, well, what does he mean by what isn't purpose? What I would say isn't purpose is what we referred to before, that you want your team to play one way, you've got one idea, but then you do a training drill that's the complete opposite of that. That for me is no purpose. So there's no point us training out to be compact in the central spaces in a low block when actually I'm not asking them to do that on Saturday. That just completely lacks purpose. And actually you'll get more purpose from saying, here's a ball, play 6v6 and let's just let the game be in the purest form. You'll get more purpose from that.
Do you share the theme of your training sessions with the players? Do they know what they're working on? And is that something that's overt? Do you do it from the get-go, or do you do it during the session or at the end? How would you approach the topics you're working on?
At the start of the session, I do a little talk as quickly as I can, by the way, especially in the winter period when you haven't got much time. Quick overview of what the session's going to entail. So, for example, playing out from the back, practice 1 will be technical work. Practice 2 will be a 6v4 build-up. Practice 3 will go into a small-sided game, but might be locked into zones to try and replicate 3v2 in the build-up zone and, 2v3 underloaded in the attacking zone. So I give them a brief overview of what the topic is. what each practice is, and kind of just a name of the practice, or not a name of the practice, a basic idea of the practice. Because I think sometimes players can go into practices blind, and if you'd have spent 10 seconds giving them a title to the practice, they would probably understand what you're saying a lot more. Like the title part of the practice or what its purpose is just so important, especially when you go into the detail. Because if you didn't tell them the name of the practice or what the outcomes were, but you just started giving them coaching detail, they'll probably think, what is this?
Yeah.
They'll take on board the detail. Whereas if it's relatable to a specific phase or a specific area of the pitch or a specific element of the game, it becomes so much more relatable and, again, transferable to the actual game for them.
When I'm coaching, I'm obsessed with making sure the players leave knowing what the practice was about, at least. So if they get back in the car with mum and dad and something, what do you work on today? They can answer that question. It may be useless to practice because a lot of mine are, but I literally know what they did. When my kids go to sessions and come back and I say, what did you do? And they say, I don't know what it was about. So I'm like, well, how do you know what to do then? Yeah, brilliant. All right, fantastic. And what about individual player? So if we want to design an effective session, how much focus would you have on individuals? And does that depend on the topic again? Would you be singling out maybe a keeper set it back if you're playing out from the back in the traditional sense of the words? And would that be part of your planning? So you're thinking, okay, I need Scott to do this, and therefore I know his strengths are this, this, and this, so I might need to work on that. Do you get to that level of detail with your planning?
Yeah, it would be my planning. But what I'd also say is that in grassroots, I don't think it's essential to really delve into individual planning. So I think if you can plan collectively based on the game model, the players all get collectively, they'll get outcomes. I think for me, probably because of working at a good level of the game and wanting to kind of keep that level and standards within now back in grassroots, I think it's important. And it's just who I am. I want to plan for individual roles and responsibilities. Like, say, if we're playing up from the back, okay, who are the key players in that? The goalkeeper, the two centre-backs, maybe the six, the full-backs. And I'll make some notes on the coaching detail that collectively we have, but also individually. And that's so important. But I don't think that's important across the board in grassroots. I really don't. Maybe people will disagree. But what I think is, if you don't want to go into that much time and level of planning in grassroots, which some people don't because they don't have the time to do, they have full-time jobs, which is normal. I think that a lot of the individual detail can come from not planning, but actually just watching the practice. So you can often watch a practice for 10 minutes and you start to see individually what could be better. If you plan for the collective detail of playing out from the back, for example, specific patterns, the shape changes as the ball moves to one side of the pitch to try and overload, isolate. Collectively, they're really, really important things because when you're given this detail, you're affecting 11 players. So it's so important to put it in there. Is it really important to plan what you should be saying and what details should be given every player? Probably not, because you'll see it within the first 5 minutes of individually what could be better or what they're really doing well, and you want to praise them for doing well. So I think in grassroots side of the game, the individual stuff's probably not important. I would say watch the practice. You'll see it within 2-3 minutes, the individual feedback and detail that you can be given to players.
You're probably better off spending more time getting a good practice organised, aren't you? And thinking about that actually allows you to get the what you're looking for to come out in it, rather than actually planning how to coach each individual. Like you say, if the game is doing what the game's supposed to do, then you're going to save you that hassle.
Because ultimately we would like to, like in grassroots, you would like to coach everyone individually, give everyone 100% of your time. But the realistic side of it is that's not possible. You have maybe an hour a week. So how can we get the most out of it? Well, my opinion would be give detail that affects all 11 players, because all 11 players are then getting something from it. Whereas if you done the playing out from the back practice and you planned to give really good detail to the centre backs and the goalkeepers, so then you've got, 8 or 9 other players who realistically, and they may be getting something out in terms of doing the practice, but they're actually not getting any coaching detail from you.
Yeah, totally agree. And final question around that then is just, again, being realistic, I guess in the pro game, you can recruit the players that you want to fit into your game model. In the grassroots game, we kind of get the players a little bit more, I guess. We're not as selective, or we can't be as fussy about the players that we get. How much would you compromise your game model based on the hand you've got to work with? Or do you stick to your principles upon your game model when you coach those players to fit into that model? Or is there some wiggle room there depending on...
That's such a good question, because I always say...
Honest answers only.
Yeah. I always say that when I watch professional football and I see a manager go into a new club and it tries to play a style of football that I don't think suits the players, I always say, and my opinion is, just do what you can to get the move. Don't move away from it. Your principles always remain the same for me. Your principles are always the same. Principles and your model are indifferent, in my opinion. slightly, but your principles can always remain the same. However, it's always important for me to get the best out of what you've got. Having said that, that's at the professional game where points are on the line, millions of pounds are on the line, your job's on the line, because if you don't start getting the best out of them players, you're sacked and you're finding a new job. Different to grassroots, I would say stick with what you believe and how the game should be played, because actually that's when the players are going to get the most and best development. Like maybe if you've got 7 players of a 6 foot at your under 14s, right? Realistically, you could start lumping the ball forward, winning headers and scoring goals. But if that's not what you believe in or believe how the game's played, then are you as motivated to deliver good training sessions to the players? Probably not, because it's not how you see the game being played. So yeah, you probably win more games, but you're less successful in developing the players, developing yourself as a coach. Stick to what you believe.
Yeah.
If you believe going long is how it should be, then do that with under 14s. If you think playing really good, attractive football is, then do that. Because ultimately, if you're coaching what you believe in, that's when the players are going to get the best and most development and the best version of yourself. Whereas you're going at Man United and you've got 6 players of a 6'5", but you start playing out from the back and you start losing games. People will start saying to you, and the millions around the world start saying, start pumping it long. Start winning first and second contacts and scoring goals, because ultimately, if you don't, you're going to lose your job. You're not going to lose your job at under 12s, Division 3, dog and duck league. Are you? All you're there for is to develop the players in yourself.
Yeah, great answer. Although you'd be surprised, some of the coaches do think is their job's on the line. But yeah,
mate, I know. I do know.
Well, you touched on this already. Thank you so much for covering that, first of all. But we've crowbarred in the second bit as well. And you mentioned it a little bit as we move into winter and thinking about some of those things. Now, again, I'm sure some of this is common sense stuff, but let's just remind ourselves that, we are adults, and sometimes adults, we can forget what it's like to be a kid in a session or a player in a session. What kind of things should we be considering as we move into the winter months around our coaching sessions and still making them effective, but also catering for the players?
Yeah, 3 things I would say. Maximize the ball rolling time is a massive importance. Avoid drills that have players standing around, and plan for all eventualities. So I'll cover all 3 individually. Ball rolling time. Spend less time talking, more time planning before the session, and make sure that the ball is rolling for as much as that 60-minute period as possible. First of all, because it's more fun when the ball's rolling. Players want the ball rolling more. But if you've went from, which I have this season, from having 3 hours a week to 1 hour a week, you become so limited in what you can do. Do you really want to spend, 15 minutes of that 60-minute session speaking? No, players don't like that. It's not engaging. Players find it boring. If you spend 15 minutes of a 3-hour session speaking, it becomes, it's 5 minutes per hour, and it becomes more reasonable. So for me, you've got to completely change your approach based on the circumstances. And again, what we went back to before, area size, time, conditions, players. So ball rolling time is a massive importance. Keep the ball rolling, especially in youth football. Let them play. You get more time. You'll get more benefit out of the session by just letting them play than you will trying to coach them for 15 minutes and give them detail, because the board and the thing, we only got 45 minutes this week opposed to 55 or 60 minutes. So keep it rolling. On the coaching detail for that point, in terms of how then best to coach detail, through the summer when you've got longer sessions, I would say you can stop the session more, give demonstrations, visuals. Through the winter months, when you've got 1 hour and you're coaching, do drive-bys. And what I mean by that is, as a coach, stay live in the session, walk through the session, walk around the session, and any detail that you see, jump on the pitch and speak to the player for 10 seconds individually, give them that little bit of detail. Or if it's a unit, if it's a fullback and a winger, you've got a little bit of detail to give them both. Quickly pull them in, 10 seconds, little bit of detail. Can we try this? Can we think about this? Back into the game. You've then lost 2 plays for 10 seconds, opposed to losing 16 plays for 3 minutes. Yeah. And it's so much more engaging way to do that. So yeah, stick to having the ball rolling as long as possible. Change your approach in coaching from stopping the session completely to doing little drive-bys and individually or collectively. Again, I'm not saying this is right, by the way, because some people in a 60-minute session might stop the session for 5 minutes and give some phenomenal detail. I'm not saying that my way is the only way, it's the correct way. But for me, you'll get the best learners and the best out of training sessions when players are the most engaged, having the most fun, and for me, that's when the ball's rolling.
Absolutely.
Second one is avoid drills at a low reps. This is for me I've got to be careful how I say this, because sometimes it's a dad taking his son's training session and he's seen Pep Guardiola, who's got 30 hours a week doing a shooting drill on YouTube, and it looks unbelievable, and he's took it to his son's training session. But honestly, and this fits into all football, so adult and senior in winter months, but you fit into youth football constantly, like at any time of year, no matter what your area size is, your conditions are, how many players. Don't do drills where players are standing still. Just I would say just don't do it. Don't have players standing in queues. Don't have them doing low reps. Like they do 3 of them run into the box for a cross and header it, and maybe little Alfie's run into the box 8 times and he hasn't even headed the ball once. But then in between that, he stood there for 60 seconds. So in 8 minutes, he's made 8 runs and he hasn't even touched the ball once. Have drills that are completely inclusive and the ball is constantly live and everybody's live at all times. And the best way to do that is little rondo practices, small-sided games, possession-based stuff, practices where every single player is involved at every point. Don't have players standing off the pitch, don't have them standing in queues, keep them constantly playing, keep the mind on the game, keep the ball flowing, and I can promise you they'll thank you for it. Now, I know a lot of grassroots coaching, I'm sure we've all seen it, because I done it when I first started. I used to do finishing drills and stuff where players would be standing around for 60 seconds. You can't tell me kids enjoy that. It's just, you know what? You have to be careful about being so opinionated in coaching because it's so subjective. But it's
there are some
that,
things that you know that it just
some things you know. If you know it's not right, and saying not right, I apologise for being so strong, but don't have kids standing out serious. Let kids play football. Do you know what I mean? Let them play. That's what they're there for. They want to have fun, smile with the mates. If at worst all they ever get from your training sessions is they've got a smile on the face, then you've been a successful coach. And they're never going to have a smile on the face, standing in a queue, waiting for the ball to come over to head it in back at net, and they might not get it. It's unbelievable. Let it roll. Move on to the third
remember
point.
Macca seeing. I mean, this is a few years back now, and he was a nice guy, this coach, but he had about 15 kids lined up, and they would do that thing on the halfway line. They'd play one pass to him. He would play he'd roll it off for them to finish. But he would take 2 or 3 touches. I don't even know why, to play the pass to the player. and I timed it. I think it was about a minute between each one. So he was getting about 40, 50 touches every minute, and they were getting like 2 each individual player, you know. And I guess when you look at the team, you're thinking, oh, it's great, everyone's doing something. But when you look at individual players, it's like when you're the busiest person on that pitch is the coach, like for about 5 minutes. And again, we've all been there, we've all done it. I've done some horrific things with regards to getting kids lined up in queues and passing balls back and forwards. But it doesn't work, does it? And in the winter months, hey, we've got to keep them running around and keep them warm and loving it.
Do you know what I'll say on that point regarding never doing drills where kids are standing round, like not even for 20 seconds, by the way. Like they can have you can have a break or a rest period when there's a designated rest period, but when the ball's flowing, let them all be involved. My point on that would be, in my opinion on that has always been that if you do practices and drills that constantly have the players involved, the ball's rolling, it's fun and engaging. The isolated stuff, so which I'm saying don't do, so the finishing drills where they're in queues or they're taking shots, they'll do that stuff away from training with the mates. Because what they'll do is they'll take a ball down the park, put 2 jumpers down, and they'll just take 100 shots at the mate, or they'll stand in the street and, you know, lash the ball to each other. They get that side of the game when they're away from the training. You can't tell me that there's a kid that goes and grassroots football who at some point in the week or month doesn't go out with his mates and play football. We all do. We all done it as kids. And what's the first thing as a kid you do when you take a ball down onto grass? You start taking shots. You start taking shots, or you start leveling the ball. So they get a lot of repetition on the isolated stuff like that away from your training practices. So don't have them stand about in the training when they've got 60 minutes to be with someone who's educated and who can help them develop as people and as players. Give them as much time on the ball as possible. Third one for that is plan for all eventualities. I've got a great rule for if you work in grassroots football, because there is nothing worse than when you first start coaching and you get 15 players coming and 3 parents text you for the session saying, oh, sorry, I can't come. Dog's at his own work. He's done. And it happens, doesn't it? And there's
that's right. That issue with 12. I can handle 12. I can't handle 11. 11 does my head in. I can handle 12.
And when you very first start coaching, and even for someone who's as loud and outgoing as me and think I'm in control of things all the time, I can remember when I first started coaching, it happened to me 3 or 4 times, and I stood at my training session with my bit of paper thinking, but how does this work? How does this adjust now? Completely thing. So plan for all eventualities is a good one. And what I mean by that is any training session I do, I have a +2, -2 rule. So for every practice, I plan it for the number of players I've got, but then I make little notes. It doesn't have to be anything detailed for a +2 player or a -2 player, because actually you might find that you do have every player, but a player drops out injured as well with a knock. So there's a +2, -2. So I'll give you a really good example. If you have I don't know, say 15 play. You have 15 players who will say they're going to turn up, and your practice time was a 5v5 plus 5 possession-based game. So 5v5 in the middle, 5 players on the outside who are always on one touch. You then get a text before training to say 2 players aren't coming, and you've now got 2 teams of 5 and a team of 3, and you're like, oh my God, how do I adjust this? How does it work? You've got to make a planning period for if you don't have them too. So it's so important to, how's the best way to say it? It's so important to make little adjustments or little notes to ensure that the practice can be just adjusted in a second or changed within a second. Because actually what you don't want to do is, back to what we said before, you don't want to waste 5 minutes thinking, how does this practice work now with 13? Because you've wasted 5 valuable minutes of the players' time that they could be getting out of the session.
Yeah. Or try and have to switch so many bibs around, or try and adjust the size too much. You want to have that thing ready, don't you, so you can react quickly to maximize your playing time again.
So back to the how it would change for anyone who's wondering. So if we were doing 5v5 plus 5, and you've got 2 texts late on, and how would it adjust? And you're crazy. Okay, I've made a note. 13 players arrive. How are we doing it? We do 4v4 plus 4, so that's 12, and then we'll have a constant floater in the middle, and that's your 13. So it's a little tiny adjustment. It would take me 10 seconds, 15 seconds to write that on a bit of paper, and it would probably save me 2 or 3 minutes of, the bibs need change, or
panicking.
The complete chaos. Just spend a minute, 2 minutes before training with every practice, plus 2 players, minus 2 players, and the plus 2 sounds mental, but actually I've had so many times people saying, if he can't come this week, and then he just turns up.
Yeah.
So plus 2, minus 2, plan for all eventualities. You'll save yourself time, you'll save yourself chaos, and so that's me 3. Ball rolling time, plan for all eventualities, and the second one, which it's avoid drills with low rest.
Drills. Yeah. Macca, top man, superb. Well, look, you cover some great detail around looking at our training practices. You cover some great detail about how we might want to adjust slightly and think about the challenges of, not if that's just not winter, it's just good practice, right? for most of the year, but particularly this time of year when you get a bit more maybe inconsistency in attendance and stuff like that. People get sick, don't they? There's bugs and stuff going around as well. So thank you so much. Look, can't let you go. A couple of last questions, if that's okay. I know in addition to football, you also provide some great stuff online, including resources. Are you happy to tell us a bit about that, what you do and what's involved there and what's available?
Yeah. So me and my brother started a business just over a year ago, the Coaches Zone. If you haven't seen it, we're available on all social medias. It's just the Coaches Zone, and our website, thecoacheszone.com. We sell notebooks, notepads, pens, tactics boards. 2024, we're going into equipment like cones, balls, mini goals. We also have a drill library on there where there's like 500 plus training drills where you can go on and categorize it. You click high press and it comes up a set of high press drills. So again, if you don't have the time to actually create the training sessions, you can go onto our website, link it to your model, find what fits and either use it or adjust it. They basically started, to give you a quick overview, it started because I was basically putting content out there. I wanted to share as many training sessions as I could with other coaches, connect with other coaches. It quickly spiraled across social media. Now we've got nearly 1 million followers, which is unbelievable. We post content on there daily, training sessions from ourselves, coaching tips, information, drills and sessions from pro clubs. It's a really good resource for coaches. There's a lot of free stuff in there. You don't even have to buy anything. There's a lot of free content. I suppose how the business came about was, and something that I was really passionate about was, look, I'm not going to lie, by the way, this is my full-time job now, and the financial side of it for us is great. So I'm not going to sit here and blag people and say that the financial side isn't good for us, because it is. But if we strip it back to the very start and what the idea behind the Coaches Zone was, so many times, and you'll see it even on telly, and I do it all the time, you write your session on a blank bit of paper, you stick it in your pocket, it gets wet, or you take it home, it goes through the wash. How many coaches in grassroots can you say, all right, on the 12th of November last year, what session did you do? What review did you make? Did you write anything about it? None. So I wanted to create products where, we've got an X planner where it's a really nice fabric planner. It's got an elastic band on it. It's got a ribbon bookmark. It's got 200 odd pages in there, so it can cover 200 odd training sessions. Because actually for me, it's so important that as coaches, we continue to develop ourselves, because it's the best way we can develop kids. And a really, really underrated way of doing that is constantly review ourselves and what we've done and what we've said. So for me personally, every single thing I do I write in the coaches' zones books or equipment. I write every single training session. I plan it. I then deliver it. I then review it. I write any notes about how I delivered good, how I delivered bad, and it's a really, really good use of. It's a really good development tool. It's free. Every single thing you write down on a bit of paper about coaching, about training sessions, if you write down, not just in a coach's own book, by the way, you could actually do it on a blank bit of paper and keep the blank bit of paper. But if you've got it in a book and you can look back on it in 12 months' time, you can reflect on where you've been, where you were, what you've said, what you've done. It's a free learning tool. There's nothing better of a learning tool than looking back on who you were, what you done, what you said, what you believed in at that time. It's unbelievable information. So we wanted to create products where coaches could find a little bit of pride in what they do. The books are really good quality, and like I said, we've got the elastic bands, the ribbon bookmarks, because we want it to feel special. Coaching for me is special. It's a really, really special thing to me. And why should we just write the sessions on a bit of paper and they go through the washing machine and they get wet, when we can document everything, look back on it, refer, and give ourselves a really, really good chance to develop.
Well, look, Christmas is coming. It's good time to get presents in the bag, like you say. Honestly, we don't plug things on the podcast unless we believe in them ourselves. I've seen the stuff that you put out there on the Coaches Zone. It's fantastic. I've seen the products you make. They're brilliant. I think as coaches, we get obsessed with this hobby, and rightly so for our players' interests, and actually having some nice things to go alongside that is something I think we earn the right to have those things.
I agree.
So, I will put the link to the Coaches Zone in the show notes, as well as your Twitter handle as well.
Thank you.
There is one last question we ask all our guests who come on the podcast, and that is, if there was one thing you could change about the world of football and coaching, I guess, but football is one bit more broad, what might that be?
It's honestly, it's an easy answer. It's a cop-out, so I apologise for being a cop-out. It is. It's a cop-out because I've spent 10 minutes talking about it, but it's the support and development we give to coaches in grassroots. And the reason I say that's the one thing I'll change is people, look, the coaches who work at the high level of the game, so, for example, under 18s academy, a Premier League academy, they obviously go on the A license courses, the pro license, they get unbelievable support, they get unbelievable resources. The most important part of a child's journey for me, in my opinion, is the very, very start, when they want to fall in love with what the game is, what the game's about. They want to fall in love with the social side, spending times with the friends in an environment they feel safe, that they find enjoyable. And I think the best way we can do that is to actually give a lot more support and development to the coaches at the very, very, I say bottom of the game. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because I've been there myself and I'm still currently there now, but give really good support and development to these people to make sure that the 60 minutes or the 90 minutes that they get with children every week is the most fun, the most engaging, and provides the best form of development. Because I actually think sometimes, we spoke about it previous in the podcast, that you see dads doing finishing drills where they stood there for 20 minutes. Actually, sometimes it's maybe just a child's dad who's taking it because there's nobody to take the training session, 100%. And they are doing the best they can. Let's make no mistake about it. They're doing the best they can, because without them, they're the unsung heroes and it won't be part. However, why can we not, as an FA or as an organisation, spend more money and time develop and educating these people? And it doesn't even have to be masses of money or masses of development. It could be 1 hour once a month for the next 12 months, and they've got 12 valuable hours. And what we've done is, by giving that coach 1 hour to develop and become a better coach and provide a better environment and a learning environment for these children, that pushes on to 20 children. Them 20 children maybe then go and take some of them lessons away to school where there's 50 children. And actually the domino effect of giving that coach 1 hour has been unbelievable to the development and, how much children fall in love with football. So the one thing I'll change is, look, I understand. I'm not saying put grassroots coaches on A license courses. What I'm saying is, can we provide them with more support and development? Because at the very starting point of the game, and children are looking to fall in love with the game and everything about the game, and they're looking to fall in love with the friends and being around the friends, why should we not be providing them with the best possible development environment possible? And so it's the one thing I'll change.
Well, that wasn't a cop-out answer. That was a very good answer. So thanks, Macca. That's well, so brilliant. All right, mate. Look, I'm so grateful for your time. You've been absolutely sensational. If listeners want to find out more about you, the work you do, and everything else, obviously I'll share some links on the show notes. But what's the best way of going about it?
I'm on Twitter at Macca Coaching, and then if you want anything the Coaches Zone related, you can find us on any social media or type into Google. I say on the question, it says there, what if anyone wants to reach out or anything like that. I'm not export. By the way, I'm still on this journey myself. I want to get to the top of the game. I'm still learning every single day myself. There's a lot I don't know about football. There's a lot I don't know about coaching. It seems like I give strong opinions on here because of who I am and the way I come across, but actually I'm a massive learner and I'm still trying to learn every day myself. So what I can't promise is that if anyone messages me, I have the best answer. But what I'll always do is if anyone's got any questions or anything, I'll always give the honest answer to people of what I believe I know at that time. So if anyone ever has any questions or wants to tweet me or send me a message about anything coaching related, then you're more than welcome to do so. And I love connecting and engaging with new coaches. I actually find this hour and 15 minutes we've spent now will probably be the best hour and 15 I'll spend all month, because I love coaching, and I love
you're away from the baby and getting some rest without having to do the baby stuff. That's what that is. Look.
Yeah, it's a good hour, this, mate. But yeah, look, talking about coaching and being involved in around coaching is, for me, my greatest love in life, bar my missus and my child. So yeah, anyone ever wants to speak, you're more than welcome to connect.
Well, Macca, look, you've proven that today, and you're right about the fact that these things have an impact in more ways than just the direct person you're speaking to. You've been fantastic. I don't think you've been coaching for 1 month or 20, 30 years. The one thing that comes through is passion. And when you've got people like you who've got the passion for it, that's when we all learn, because that gets us all going again, So thank you so much for being so passionate, sharing your thoughts. Will you come back on again, maybe at some point in the not too distant future, and we'll do another topic? Yeah,
mate, I would love to come on here regularly. It's like I like the sound of my own voice, which people who know me would probably say is true. However, I just love talking about. Is there anything better than anything pure than talking about coaching? I love it.
Couldn't agree more. Well, look, there's so many topics we can cover, so let's do that then, okay? In the new year, back on again. Is that a deal?
Yes, I love it. New year, we'll do it.
Macca, have a great Christmas. Thanks so much for being a wonderful guest today, and look forward to catch up again soon.
Top man, thank you very much.
This episode was brought to you in association with our friends at Soccer Coach Weekly. Established since 2006, Soccer Coach Weekly is a leading source of inspiration and advice for all grassroots coaches. Join thousands of youth soccer coaches just like you, saving time and effort in their goal of having the most effective, enjoyable and successful coaching journey for them and their players. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode.